Welcome to the South by East podcast, where we discuss culture, the scriptures, and everything in between, and how they impact Southeast Topeka with your co-hosts, Jonathan Sublett and Braille Watson.
All right, man. We are so excited today to be back with you, South by East fam. And today we have not one, but two special guests with us today. And just in case you don't know, you should. But if you behind the times, I want to give you just a little taste of glory, what you're going to see today. To my left, I have Miss Melissa Goodman. You see, shortly after completing her undergraduate degree at Washburn University in 2012, Melissa started her career with Mirror Inc., a residential reentry center here in Topeka, Kansas. While her emphasis was in corrections, Melissa quickly found that her passion was working with individuals releasing from the custody of Federal Bureau prisons. Now, as she was completing her undergraduate degree with Washburn in 2017, Melissa served as the interim vice president of correctional services for Mirror Inc. In the spring of 2018, she became the director of federal programs for the Reentry Center until her promotion in September 2001. And now she's in her current role as vice president of correctional services. She now oversees reentry services for Mirror Inc., including the Work for Success program in Topeka and Lawrence. Reentry is founded on the belief, and she wanted me to make sure I mention this. Reentry is founded on the belief that we are not defined by our past. Every single day is an opportunity and a gift. And if you hear that in a sermon, I told it to her. Melissa hopes to expand reentry services throughout Kansas to provide opportunities for justice-involved individuals. Outside of her career, Melissa also serves as a board member for the Team Blake Foundation, which serves children throughout Kansas who are affected by cancer and other life-threatening illnesses. Her greatest source of joy, drive, and purpose stems from being a mother of her young boys. So back at home, y'all put your hands together for Melissa Goodman. And in this corner, on my right, we have the lovely Miss Kristen Shook. Kristen, woo. Kristen grew up here in Topeka and attended Washburn University as well, where she earned a bachelor's of psychology and minored in leadership. Her career with Mirror Inc. started in August of 2018. For the first 3 years, she worked at the Residential Reentry Center, where she was challenged but gained a wide variety of skills and knowledge. She excelled, was able to pivot her focus into community outreach and development, which is probably why you've seen her all over town. Kristen explains herself as someone with a psychological mind with a business mindset. Kristen has skills in writing, research, and audio editing, so we're going to hit her up after this. She is active within the city of Topeka, always looking for a way to help others or volunteer her time and skills to better her community. Let's put it together for Kristen Show. Yes. All right, man, we are so excited to have you guys here. How y'all doing today?
Oh, man, today has been one of those days where it's just like, your lunch sack's over in the corner untouched,
I think all of us
days.
have lunch stashed somewhere in the room.
I know. But we're glad to be here. We've been looking forward to it.
Man, same. And man, you both have a passion about Topeka. That's actually how I've connected with you guys since being here. You do a lot of work that really impacts other people here. And so often people who are really passionate about their work, it also flows, see, this is why we need to edit. It also flows into other areas of their lives. So what is a talent, a hobby, or interest that you have that those who check out your LinkedIn may not know about Melissa or Kristen?
I would say for me, two of my big things besides, family and the foundation and everything, one of those is food. I am a foodie. I was going to be a chef, and
yes, that's right.
I take that seriously. I know what I'm going to eat tomorrow. I know what I'm going to eat the next day.
I got to play it out.
And, that's where a good percentage of my savings My poor boys, their college savings goes to eating out probably. So I'm a huge foodie, and food is just very, very important. And I think it's a form of art and expression. And besides that, tennis. Tennis is one of my absolute hobbies I love, but I can't do it right now with a couple shoulder surgeries.
Right now you're recovering a little bit.
Recovering, so hope to get back to that because it's also my outlet.
Nice.
What you know about that mango sticky rice?
I know.
Yeah.
Where y'all getting this mango sticky rice? Where's the best mango sticky rice?
No, I'm glad you asked.
Where? All right.
Jong's Thai Kitchen.
There it is.
Yes, and one of the happiest days of my entire life after having children
Of course.
I've got to say after.
Because they're going to see the episode. After
having children was I have a dish named after me at Jong's Thai Kitchen, and it's like one of my the pinnacle of my life, success was I was walking down the street and someone introduced me as, oh, this is the Melissa from the Melissa's Chicken at Jong's, and I was like, my whole life was like, I can die.
That's another level. Yeah, that's another level. Melissa's Chicken.
They're so sweet though, so generous. So
I better not forget that.
Yeah, do you try it?
Get it in.
Official.
But you better
the
make
best.
a reservation.
Yeah. Oh, for
You
sure.
have
You
to have
can't
a
just slide up.
reservation.
You can't
No.
just roll up on Jong's.
No.
You got to be ready, man. What about you, Kristen?
Well, I definitely also love food, but that was not going to be on my list, so I'll have to say that as well. And thank you for introducing me to Jong's, because oh my goodness.
Yeah, you changed my life.
A couple of other things that I'm really interested in and passionate in that I don't speak a lot about is real estate. While I was working as a tech, I spent a lot of time actually learning about real estate through podcasts, and I really hope to make a big splash in the community and help those that kind of need it, and then provide good housing for anybody that might need it down the road. And then I also, my passion as I was growing up was softball.
Okay.
Yeah, slugger.
Underhand.
I know, right?
Underhand.
What
Did a little bit of everything.
How do you feel about the Olympics taking away softball
Yeah,
for a while?
the Olympics canceling softball.
I'll be honest, I'm not that into it. It was my passion, and that's what I did. I spent
You
my
just like
time.
to play. You just like to play.
I
I am
don't
too.
I can't watch it.
See,
If
that
I'm
was-
not playing, I don't.
That was me with
not the
basketball.
same.
I'm actually not a sports fan, but I love to play basketball. It was just what me and all my friends did. We go home, play basketball video games, then we get out on the court and play. And so it's like, it was our thing. And people be like, man, so who's your favorite team? I'm like, I like the, who you like?
So I should bring up Jenny Finch. That wouldn't.
Okay, well, I was playing softball around that time, so yes, I get
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I mean, it makes me sad to watch it, because I'm like, man, I
Man,
want to
so
go back.
I know. That's how I feel about watching tennis. Just want to get out there.
it just makes you want to be out there.
Yeah.
I feel that. But y'all are out there when it comes to being in Topeka. So as Washburn graduates, as people who have spent a lot of time investing in the community, what is your favorite Topeka initiative right now? Your favorite thing going on in the city right now?
I feel like this isn't showing much humility by saying this, but one of the things I'm most excited about is we are getting ready to do a reentry simulation you should come if you'd like, but
Okay.
we're doing a reentry simulation at the next Shawnee County Reentry Council, which was started about a year ago, but the reentry simulation, which we're getting real crafty about trying to record that experience and put together a video for it, but we have about the staff from USP Leavenworth, they're putting it all together for us. It's at the Law Enforcement Center here in Topeka.
Okay.
And so it's an exercise, but really it's to show you, you get off the bus, from prison, and here's your envelope, and here's the stack of cards you're dealt, and there will be challenges, barriers, everything, you'll have this identity, and you will need to be successful.
Wow.
And it's so cool. I did it back in probably 2017, and it blew my mind.
So it's another take on a poverty simulation. I've done
Yep,
poverty simulation, and I've been impoverished, so I know what it means to be broke.
Yeah. I'm like, I know it. I'm like,
Being broke
Like my life was a poverty simulator. Yeah, yeah. My life was a poverty simulator. But that sounds really interesting.
It's cool.
When is that? Like what day is that? I want to make sure we.
So it's Wednesday, September 21st, and
Wednesday,
the mayor's
September
actually going to
21st.
be there as well.
Oh, really?
And Kristen set that up, so she was.
Can anyone
That's
sign
pretty
up for
sick.
that, or how
No,
do you?
it is okay. So that's
apart?
the other thing that's completely warmed my heart with the Shawnee County Reentry Council. We grew from our first meeting to our second meeting. We grew 100%. I mean, I had people who reach out to me after each meeting asking to be a part of the council, and I haven't had to like seek people really to be a part of it. And
That's a great thing.
it's heartwarming because it's attorneys, parole, probation, all these people, law enforcement, all these people who want to be involved. And it makes me feel this tide has changed in our community about, lifting people up. And so that's one of my favorite, I feel bad saying it, but that's one of my favorite things going on.
That is incredible, especially, man, I used to work for Kansas Democratic Party. My first job was working for the Kansas Democratic Party. I was 15. I was 15. So I walked all around all of Topeka, talking about getting people to vote, especially areas like Hi-Crest, because I worked with a couple of melanin-deprived college students who did not like going into black areas of town. So they would just drop me off and be like, hey, fam, here's all of our papers. You go hit them. We're going to be at the mall, and we'll pick you up at this time. Because I didn't know how the job worked. So they're just like, all right. So I would do all the black areas, and like I would just walk through. But I got to speak to so many people in the community, and a lot of them were felons. And so as I would get to talk to people in the community, that's where I learned about felons not being able to vote and different things like that. And I got to learn so much about people's stories while I was there and getting to just peer behind some of the myths that we see and even seeing how they felt about the Topeka police and different things like that. I also had a police called on me while I was canvassing once, but that's a whole nother story. But getting to see that and getting to see the enmity between the community and the police officers, and then later on years later, getting to be a part of different banquets and things where I got to sit next to some of those same officers and talk about those relationships and see those things change. Things like this, things like the, KAPCP, it was too many letters, but the council where the Topeka Police Department was partnering with different members of the community. Like, those things are so important to me because our relationships are our currency. And in many ways, the currency between the community and city officials in many places have been bankrupt. And it is the enemy of progress because our city officials, those who are hired by our city, cannot make progress without our community, and our community really can't make progress without those in those positions of power as well. So, man, I'm super excited. That's probably my favorite thing happening now too. You sold me. You sold me.
Tune in to the August 21st sermon at Fellowship Hi-Crest, where we'll be talking about the troubles of reentry for inmates.
Yes.
How our society gives out scarlet letters to
Yes.
those with felonies.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's
That'd be perfect. Yeah.
for this coming Sunday.
Yep. So you'll be able to catch that online. That'll be on YouTube for you to go back and look. August 21st. All right, Kristen. Favorite thing in the city?
It's gonna be a tough one.
Man, you everywhere.
She is.
You were everywhere. You were linked with my brother in
I have
Colt.
a whole list.
Go into that, yeah.
Honestly, but do I have to only say one?
You-
I mean,
you-
I don't
you-
want to be
you-
that
why don't you-
obvious,
why
but
don't you bullet it?
definitely I'm
Yeah.
like super, super excited for the reentry simulation. And another really cool project that I've been able to be a part of is the Reentry Reframed podcast. And with that, we are helping reduce the stigma of incarceration on both sides. So we have individuals who came from prison and began their lives after incarceration come on and tell their story as much or as little as they want to. But then we also have professionals in the field come on and tell their story and how they help these individuals get back to their life the correct way.
That's awesome.
And then with that, everything that you guys are working on here in the Hi-Crest area and the library has a very awesome new upper level where a lot of people can go get some new skills and learn and then kind of just take off from there. So too much good stuff to go around.
Yeah, so for all of y'all saying there ain't nothing happening in Topeka, you heard it here. there's plenty to plug in on. All right, man. My last kind of personal question as we jump in. So most of the time when people get to know me and spend more time with me, they find out that my actual name is not Braille. And usually the face I get is,
I know, I'm like,
well, see,
Yeah.
that's what happens. They find out my name's not Braille, and they're like, well, how'd that happen? And I'm like, well, it all starts with a Kansas City toilet. And that's how I know if they really want to know or not. That's how I gauge it, if they really want to know or not. But so I don't, at the risk of opening up an embarrassing story, and if it's there, we can skate that. We can move on. But man, MG and K2, where did those nicknames come from? I started watching, listening to the podcast, and was like, MG and K2?
Yeah.
Like, where did those come from?
Okay, so I'll share Kristen's, and then you can share a little bit of mine. But K2 is synthetic marijuana. It's one of the worst things it's one of the worst things we deal with at the reentry center. Some of the scariest moments of my entire career have dealt with K2. So Kristen is one of those people who can enter a room and do a search and come up with something that you're like, what? Like, I could have just searched that room for an hour. She can walk in 2 minutes later, come out with like 10 bags of K2. And so she just is known almost as like better than a drug dog.
Like the drug dog it is.
And the residents even would stress out. They'd be like, "Chris, this is going to my room. I'm done. Like, game over." And so we all the staff. I mean, that's not super professional, but we all call her K2 just because I would say her ability to find drugs is unparalleled. I've never seen anything like it. So. No, she just is like she can find anything anywhere at any time.
Kristen the plug. Kristen.
No, she. Well, yeah, right.
That is amazing, though.
She has
No,
access to
that is incredible.
But she turns the drugs over. But
I believe you.
yeah. But she can find stuff anywhere. So anyways, that's how over the years, I mean, but my best one I remember, I don't want to give people ideas of where to hide stuff, but deodorant thing, and then taking out the actual stick, and then even the screw up part that's flat, and then taking all that out.
Y'all take note.
No, I'm like, don't.
You want all the good spots to hide.
There's a simulation on that too of teaching parents where to search at in their kids' rooms.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a resource.
She could do
I didn't know they do that, but I'm in their meetings too. So.
Vince.
Oh man. Okay, MG. Give us the MG.
I don't even know where it technically started, but she has to have a cool nickname too. So MG, it's your initials, and it sounds cool.
Everybody, nobody calls me that.
90s rap fan.
Yeah, MGK2, MGK2, like MGK, yeah.
Well, it's funny because no one calls me by my real name, and not in tennis, not at work. Like, nobody calls me by my real name, and even me, like when I would introduce myself to new residents and stuff. I had the hardest time with saying, I'm the director. So I would say, in like my German voice, I'd be like, I am the director. Like being so, so I just am not good like at introductions. Awesome. So people just call me.
You walk into the center, you have no idea what's going on. You're like, man, I hope these people are able to help me. And it's like, I am the director. You're like, oh gosh, Arnold Schwarzenegger sending me to my room.
So I just would like be playful with it and like, cause I don't know. So anyways, nobody calls me by my real name.
Yeah, I know. Just started calling you MG because it's a lot easier than your full name.
Yeah. But that's cool. I love that you guys have just like a spirit of levity, like a spirit of just fun, and because you work in some pretty serious spaces. Like
do.
Melissa, so working in the criminal justice system, most people when they hear that, especially when they hear about corrections, they're thinking of putting people in jail. But that's actually not your bag. That's actually not what you're interested in. Could you tell us a little more about what you do and why you feel it's important?
Yeah, so right away, I did my internship with a youth detention center, and I knew right away I didn't want to necessarily put people in the system. I didn't want to work with people inside the prison setting. And so reentry was this perfect fit for me because I explain it as the positive side of corrections because people are coming back to the community. They're almost done with their sentences. And so we're really setting people up for success, making sure they have everything they need. But also, just to be really honest, sometimes people aren't ready either. So sometimes we're working in the opposite direction of increasing accountability, and sometimes people commit new crimes, you know, when they're out for reentry, but it's very structured, and it gives people the room to either run with it, you know, and excel and do well, or sometimes we go in the other direction, which, you know, it's this balance of community safety, but also, like I said, giving someone the tools they need to be successful.
That was good.
It's a balance. I mean, it really is. We're not just out here, you know, it's just about the residents. You know, we're just as mindful of, we're right next to a high school. You know, a lot of people don't even know we're there. But I tell you, anytime that high school asks for me to sponsor some, sign us up, because we want to be good partners. You know, when our residents are have too much base, you know, at 10 o'clock, we want to be good, you know, neighbors. And so we're explaining how we want to be looked at as an asset in our community and not a liability.
And you guys are right next to Highland Park High School, right? Which is our feeder school here in our community. And so I was looking up some stuff about, I was like, they're right next to H. Okay, so that's right in the community where spend a lot of time there. Man, that is cool. That is cool.
We're protective too, you know, of the high school. We're very protective. For instance, we don't allow smoke breaks during times that students are going to, in the morning or in the afternoons. We don't allow smoke breaks. We lock down movement. Just because, like I said, it's this balance, and we're really mindful of, ultimately, you know, we care so much about our community, and so we're very protective of the high school as well. And
I love that you talk about kind of the joy side of accountability. Because a lot of people, when they hear accountability, they think of it like a 4-letter word, like it's a harsh word, but without boundaries, you don't have a country. Without a door, you don't have a room. Like, you don't have a place of belonging. You don't have a sense of where you are in the world without boundaries. And really, we all crave boundaries. My kids will tell you they wish they didn't have as much accountability as they do. But the truth is, whenever accountability skates, everyone feels unsafe.
So, I mean, a good point to that. The halfway house in Missouri closed in 2018. There was a halfway house in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. And we got notice that it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, get a phone call and saying our population is almost going to double because we now are going to split this population between Leavenworth and Topeka. And so it was just, when the new residents came in, just to give you an example, a handful couldn't leave because they weren't legal to drive. So the guys who drove here from the other halfway house, some of them couldn't even leave. They had to stay the night because they didn't have insurance, a driver's license, or registration. And you know, when we said, hey, we have to know where you're going, we have to do your home inspection, they would say, I'd have to tell you where I'm going. And I was like, you know, that type of thing. So without accountability, it just cannot be, and it isn't, obviously, because there is no halfway house now in Kansas City, Missouri, partially for that reason.
And so someone who partners with my ministry is actually Jonathan's wife, my student ministry, and she's an expert in TBRI, trust-based relational intervention training, and she's been working with our youth leaders. And one of the things that she was talking about in one of our sessions was, she says there's no behavior for no reason, which means that every behavior that you see played out has something behind it, has something that they're processing and going through. And for a lot of those students, their fight, flight, or freeze is activated out of fear because they feel uncomfortable with something. They become what she calls being dysregulated. So they become dysregulated. I can only imagine how dysregulated I would be if I didn't have the ability to drive legally, right? I don't have a license. I don't have insurance. So if I do drive and someone gets hurt or something happens, I have no protection. I'm in a position where if I end up in certain parts of town, I'll probably get arrested. I have no to be in a constant state of fight or flight. You know, it would be hard to trust people, but also without healthy boundaries and accountability, I'd probably never feel safe. And so I'd probably act in some ways or move in some ways just out of fear. I mean, I'm not even in that position now, and when I feel unsafe, sometimes I move in some ways where I look back and I'm like, man, I really wish I didn't do that. And I'm not nearly facing those types of things. So I really feel like it is a beautiful thing to hold people accountable and to help them feel like they actually have a sturdiness in their life, something that they can hold to.
I want to piggyback off that because that's actually that was the thought that got me Melissa's business card, was the fact that most individuals who are committing any type of crime have some type of underlying trauma that they just don't know how to address correctly. So whether they are going to jail for shoplifting or a DUI or having drugs on them, there is a trauma that they are trying to help themselves with that we are not aware of. And so when I spoke to the lady that gave me Melissa's business card, I told her what I would really love to see in the future, which I feel like is starting to be worked on, is rather than individuals getting booked into the system, whether it be jail or prison, for the first time, they have kind of a direction rather than, automatically being incarcerated. They have an option to try treatment and try to get better and address that underlying trauma.
Man, that's so important. And matter of fact, we're going to be taking a quick break here, but when we come back, Kristen, I'd really love to talk about I read one of your articles about mental health and minority communities, and I'd really like to dig into that a little more. So we're going to take a quick break here on South by East, and we will be back.
Are you interested in podcasting, audio, or visual media and just don't know how to get started or take your content to the next level? Then Studio 104 was built just for you. A fully functioning audio-visual podcast studio, industry-level equipment at an affordable price to help you make that album you always wanted, start that podcast, or even share the story of how your business is impacting the community. Book your session along with a free consultation today at www.fellowshiphighcrest.com/studio104.
All right, we are back with South by East, and I'm joined by Melissa Goodman and Kristen Shook from Mirror. And when we left off, Kristen, we were just talking about some of your interest in digging into the mental health aspect of corrections and how that plays. You wrote a really cool article on mental health and minorities, and I just wanted to know if you could share a little more with us about how you think mental health plays into this whole situation, and how do you see what you do as supporting the mental health of the community on our journey?
So that's a super packed question.
It is super packed.
And thank you very much for actually taking the time to read it and then also letting me know that you did read it.
No doubt.
Mental health in general is important for anybody and everybody. And everybody has gone through something, mental health-wise that maybe not everybody knows. In the work that we do, we try to, one, let them know that things are okay, but then two, we give them a space to kind of address what they may have gone through, and we give them that time to work through it themselves, or if they can't really get through it by themselves, we are partnered with a ton of resources here in Shawnee County, and we are more than happy to pass people to who they may need. That's kind of what I do just automatically to anybody that I meet. If I know that they're struggling with something, I'll connect them with whoever they may need, or even if they have a goal, I'll connect them with who may be able to help them achieve that goal. And so bottom line in mental health, you can't live, like you were saying, you can't live fully and presently if you are battling some kind of mental health. And that it could be as simple or as deep as it can be. And something that I tell people is, on the outside, you can never gauge what somebody's thermometer is when it comes to mental health. So no matter what somebody gone through, you might not think it was that big of a deal, but that might have been their worst stress in their life, so they don't know how to process it. They don't know what they're doing. And then, you add in age or minority status and everything like that, and it's creating a culture of awareness before you try to start addressing what the trauma could be. And then it's also finding somebody who can understand that they'll also connect with, and not just kind of have that thought of like, oh, you wouldn't understand anyways because you haven't gone through it.
Right.
And so mental health in general, it's so important, because in order for you to do what your purpose is, you have to be able to address who you are and why you are before you can actually excel in what you need to be doing.
You have to be able to address who you are and why you are before you can really start to excel in what you're doing. That's a quote right there. We don't have to clip that. But I think that's amazing. And what I kind of hear is you're like, man, I'm moving towards advocacy as much as I can. We actually had, earlier in this season, we had Felicia Glass, who is a grief specialist, and was on, and she was just talking about how issues with mental health is, there's a sickness going on, and you would never look at someone who's, like, somebody's got COVID, and they're like, you got COVID, and you're like, man, why didn't you show up to this thing and turn it? It's like, man, I was sick. Like, I was sick, and so many times we're dealing with mental health issues, and people are sick, and we expect them to just respond normally or in the optimal way. Did you know that they say that people who live in despondent poverty, so that means the utmost devastating poverty, that they actually live in a state of perpetual fight, flight, or freeze. That it actually daily having to worry about what you're going to eat, where you're going to go, how things are going to work out. It actually puts you in a state of always being in a place where your prefrontal cortex is almost completely shut off. And so it's like the decisions you're making. So like you take people who grow up in poverty, where that's the normal. You know, I grew up in poverty. And so all of the people around me, many of the people around me at least, were struggling with mental health. The kids that I was dealing with in school were living out the effects of a home of people struggling with mental health. And often when we look at people, we don't address why they are. We don't address why they are, but instead we address what they do. And so like I think that type of advocacy is so important. I think that is so important.
And then so just another side piece, because it is a little bit about what we're doing. I'm involved with the Mosaic Partnership Program here in Topeka. And what that is it's really fun, and I can't wait to learn more about how they do it. But you get partnered with somebody that looks different than you and that you believe is going to be completely different than you. And throughout the process, I'm able to facilitate this year. And throughout the process, you kind of go through the stages of having those difficult conversations. So you say, what is a friendship? And then you, as a group, you kind of talk about that. How do you build that connection? What do you need to do to build that trust to make it into an actual friendship? And then you go and we talk about culture. So like, and it's kind of easily going into those difficult topics. But since everybody is there for a reason, and that's why, you're able to kind of get that conversation actually out there in the open. And then, you know, some people have had difficult childhoods or backgrounds, and they're able to kind of put that out there. And then you go through a perception kind of thing, and there's a photo of a room, and you're trying to figure out who this person is that has this office. And so everybody's putting their perceptions out there, and they're guessing, right? And so it shows that it's just an automatic thing that humans do, but the importance is learning to break through that and actually get through it and learn who you are around. Learn about your community before you can actually start partnering with them and really make the change that they need, not the change that you actually think they need.
Okay, come on now. Come on now. Let me invite you in. You preach for me on this week. No, no, man, that's so important. You know, in school, when you go to a school, you're kind of forced to associate with people, right? And a lot of people have a hard time making friends when they become adults, which is why we're doing a series on friendship later on in this year, because you're no longer forced to intentionally be around people. And in society right now, Jonathan, as one of the future fellows of Kansas, was like, 11 individuals, 13 individuals, 11 individuals who came together from around the state to craft plans for how to improve the state and solve some of the state's problems for the next 50 to 100 years, right? And as a part of that research, he saw that the country is becoming increasingly more divided, that people are moving into polar spaces where they find people that are like them. So literally the world around you is siloing off into places where everyone is the same. So in order for us to have diversity or to have diverse opinions, there has to be extreme intentionality in seeing that, or we lose that gift. Man, and so I think that is so important. So we talked a little bit about Mirror Inc., and we've kind of gone over that, but we haven't hit it specifically. So Melissa, could you tell us a little more about what Mirror Inc. is and how it impacts our community?
And I would love to, because Mirror Inc., I've been getting ready to hit my decade with Mirror Inc., and I love thank you. I love what we do. I want to be a part of it my entire career. I absolutely adore what we do. And one of the things that we're really big on is, so we've been around for 50 years. We're a nonprofit, and prevention is really getting a lot of momentum within our organization. I mean, just national attention and and I love the metaphor for this. Prevention is going further down the river, trying to catch people before they fall in, where treatment and reentry and that kind of stuff, we're trying to pull people out. But prevention is, again, you get it. You're like, I get it.
Yeah. No, man,
but so prevention is so important. We're doing some really innovative, like I said, getting national attention, because there are things that are actually working. And the kids who are working and being advocates for prevention for Mirror, I've met a lot of them, and they are incredible. So we have this incredible team. But Work for Success, those programs are incredible. That's actually where my office has moved to, our downtown Work for Success location. And so Kristen's office out of there as well. But so we've both been very immersed. I've been aware of this program since its inception 7 years ago. But it's essentially a parenting program for now both mothers and fathers, and then personal and professional development, to where you're helping people, get jobs and do all these types of things. And so the Work for Success programs are also really cool, because they have so many different resources, to where they can say someone doesn't have their ID, they can pay for that, or they can help someone get their first month's rent in an apartment, or sober living.
Helping to lower hurdles.
Yeah. And so. And then we have reentry, which we're now trying to expand. We've gone after some funding I know we're waiting to hear back on this this federal grant, and so that would be a dream come true, and you'll hear about it if we are awarded this grant, because it is I wrote the idea behind it, and it was just, if you could have a dream program for reentry, what would it look like? And then sit down with Shawnee County Jail and say, if you could do anything and money wasn't a factor, what would you want? And then teaming up with those ideas on what do you want, and what would reentry really look like.
Wow, okay, yeah.
And so that's really cool. And then treatment, we have 19 different locations, inpatient and outpatient, for treatment. Mirror, this isn't something that is sustainable, but we lost almost $1.5 million last year by providing services to people who, when our funding ran out, and our funding streams, we have blended funding streams, but when we didn't have the funding to pay for treatment, we weren't turning people away. And historically, that has been, it's something we all want to say, oh yeah, we don't ever want to turn anyone away. But it's not sustainable to do that. And so we're constantly working to expand funding sources, because the need is there, the funding is not. And as an organization who's been around for 50 years, we want to be around for 50 more.
Right.
And so, but it's this balance between heart business. So we need to figure out how to move forward.
When the business doesn't run, no one has actually helped.
Yeah.
No one has actually helped. There was we were doing early in this church, as Fellowship Hi-Crest, we were planted by Fellowship Bible Church. We were a church plant. We were originally a campus of FBC. And when we became an independent church in 2021, we experienced a big dip. For one, you got COVID happening in the middle of there, 2020. You have us becoming an independent church, and a lot of people who were connected through FBC, right? You have a lot of factors going. And so we go from like a church of 350, 375 to a church of like 110. Right, and so you lose a lot of members in all these different volunteer areas, and one of them was, throughout that time, was the worship arts team. So I lead the worship arts team, and we had a rotation, because that's how FBC did it. It was part of how we do things, and we got to this place where it was like, I was talking to the guy who was mentoring me in that area at the time, Bill Horn. I was like, bro, how do I fix this rotation? Like, we just don't have enough people. He was like, bro, let there be a hole. He's like, when people see that there's a hole, you'll find out how much people care about it. And often you'll find the person who wants to step up to do it, because people sometimes don't realize that there's a need until they look out and see, oh, wait, we used to have that. We don't have that anymore. That's not covered anymore. What's going on? And then they start asking questions about, do I need to step up? And so I started letting there be holes on Sunday morning. Hey, guys, we don't have drums today. Let's put our hands together. Hey, guys, let's. And it was like, all of a sudden, man, everybody knew how to play the drums. Everybody knew how to play, but it's like we had to let there be a hole. And though it sometimes it doesn't seem like the loving thing to do, but making the move for health and moving in the healthy way and allowing there to be a whole, hey, we can't healthily do this right now. Here's what it would look like. Having the plan together, here's what it would look like if we had those resources, but right now we don't, often allows opportunities for others to join together and for you to see things like, man, that awesome program that I know you're not going to say too much about, but that I'm pretty excited about. And speaking of that, so around 2007, I got really interested in prison reform and specifically in recidivism. Don't ask me why a high schooler was just out researching recidivism. That's what I do. And so I was out doing a lot of research around recidivism and prison reform. And for those who aren't familiar, recidivism is the tendency for those who have been incarcerated to commit crimes and go back into jail, to be incarcerated again. And it's something that happens a lot. Matter of fact, here in Kansas, for reference, in Kansas, our recidivism rate is actually 33.1%. And often in discussions around recidivism, there's a lot of talk about what happens in prisons, prison reform, and what's happening in those areas, but not so much what actually happens when people leave, which is where recidivism actually occurs. Right? And so there's not so much emphasis given there. And so I wanted to know what impact do you think the work that you do as a part of reentry actually has on recidivism and the families that feel the impact of that?
I know that's something, why I think I've never lost my passion for reentry is because I see the impact every single day. And I think part of what we do when someone gets released from prison, there's so much unknown, and even though it's getting out of prison, it's a happy time. There's a lack of resources. You might not have a place to live. You might not have a job. All these things, and you go from sometimes a maximum security prison to hitting the streets with nowhere to live, and it's the perfect storm for recidivism. And so the Reentry Center, one of the biggest needs I've seen is that we have a federal contract, and I receive all these letters, people writing from state prisons asking, hey, can I have a bed date? This is when I get out. And it'll be years down the road. And I always write them back and just explain, we're working on this, I promise, but I have this stack of letters. I have a picture of it, but I have this stack of letters because I want to eventually just say, yes, here's the address you'll go to. We'll pick you up at the bus station, because those wraparound services we need to provide someone, they're crucial to someone's success. And so I guess the answer to that is I know MIR is making a big difference, not just in our community, but also Kansas City, Missouri. We have a lot of people who were originally planning on going back to Kansas City and who stay in Topeka because getting away from that lifestyle, their playground, if you will, where they grew up. I mean, sometimes they're successful here because they're in a different community. Yeah. And so I like that we've been able to help so many different, I just flash all these different people in my mind of people we've been able to help. And so I think a lot of it is just giving people the resources and the support they need. And I like that we can give people time as well, step down security levels, but a lot of people don't have a place to live whenever they get out of prison. Yeah. And that directly goes back to, that hierarchy of needs of, like you said, what am I gonna eat today? All these things are answered, so you get to focus on getting a good job and getting a car and connecting with family.
Man, I kept hoping you would say the H word in there, hope. You give people hope. when we talk about the gospel, I just had a conversation with someone, I was sharing the gospel with somebody the other day, and they had a near-death experience, and they were like, man, I felt the weeping and the gnashing of teeth, and it was terrible. I just never want to be there again. I just never want to be there again. And so like his whole life was like, I'm gonna do the right thing because I just never want to be there again. And it was like, man, eventually you're gonna burn out from that. Because when fear and anguish are your motivators, they're gonna wear you out. But when you can look at the future and know that something better is coming tomorrow than what you see today. When Jonathan always shares this example, he says that there are animals within the animal kingdom that can jump 3 times as high as they stand, but they'll 2 times as high as they stand. Thank you. I always like to be accurate, so you're helping your boy out. They can jump 2 times as high as they stand, but they'll never leave the ground if they can't see where they're going to land. And so people being able to make that leap, being able to take that jump and having a landing place, it gives them hope.
I think so too. I was just real quick, when you were talking about that, it reminded me of about 6 months ago. I was sitting in my office, which is across from the women's day room, my old office, and I heard a woman sobbing, one of her new residents. And I go in there, and she's bawling. She left her children. She was, she had relapsed, was using drugs, and her probation officer put her at the reentry center versus sending her back to prison and revoking her. So it was an opportunity. But she was so despondent because, she was worried about her children. They were in another state, all these things. She was completely overwhelmed as she's also trying to regain her sobriety. And I told her, I wish I could fast forward, 6 months from now and show you what life will be like for you, because I know that's what it'll be like. And so I saw her, progress through it, and she was getting ready to release about a week ago. Looks like a completely different person, just radiates joy. And I just told her, I said, do you remember I promised you that we would get here? And it was just really cool because she was going home to be with her children, and she just was like this completely, it just fills my heart up. So, yeah, it was cool. But I wish I could show people that when they're at their lowest point, because I know they'll get there. I just wish I could have a DVD.
Yeah. Like, this is you.
Yeah,
this is
I
you.
promise it can happen.
Being able to see yourself. And I think there is something, to be said about the work that you guys do at Mirror and with the Reentry Reframe podcast of allowing people to see themselves. Part of the reason that we do so much with stories, that we built this studio, and is that when you use the power of story, people radiate towards things they relate to. And so when they can see themselves in something, when they can see themselves represented in a particular field, or when they can see themselves represented in a particular phase or stage of life, people are more likely to move in that space. And so I think that there is a piece of people being able to see themselves because of not only the resources that you provide, but also the stories that you guys provide. Speaking of which, could you guys tell us a little bit about the Reentry Reframed podcast? Like, where did that come about, and what's your goal with that?
So Kristen can tell you how it came about, and then I can share some of the goals, and then we have a challenge for you.
You got a challenge for me. All right, we can hit it. We got 8 minutes before we hit break.
So Melissa started the Shawnee County Reentry Council, and at our very first meeting, we were brainstorming kind of what was our goal, where were we steering towards, and one of the biggest things was, how do we get this message out to people? And she was sitting next to me, and one of my ideas, I whispered over to her, and I was like, hey, we should start a podcast. And then, I guess she kind of thought about it a little bit and got a little bit of approval, and I got the okay. So then I was like, oh, great, now I have to do this.
Now we have to actually start a podcast.
Now we gotta so I got to learn really quickly how to start a podcast, and it's been going wonderful ever since. So I really wanted to do it mostly because of, like you said before, like nobody knows what happens when people get out of prison. And so it's really important to inform society of that so that they may not be so scared.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
And that's, we talk about on our first episode, dispelling some of those myths, because someone commits a crime and is on the booking sheets, you'll see social media, everybody wants to talk about that, but somebody gets out of the system and is doing all these great things, and that doesn't blow up, and so that's what we want to highlight are the people who are out in our community who have done a 180 and who are now some of the biggest movers in our community, giving back to the community. We want to blow up those stories because there are many more of those stories.
Yeah.
So really it's also about, so we rotate between, like Kristen said, having someone who's been in the system and then having someone who works at some level of reentry. And a lot of times it overlaps because, it might be someone who's done time but is now a counselor, and so there's a lot of overlap. And especially on the reentry council, it's very important to have people on the reentry council who had been through the system because we wanted everyone to have a voice. And so on the podcast, it's the same. We want to represent everyone who has anything to do with reentry. And we want to hear from, I talked to someone, I did a podcast episode today of basically through a child's eyes. So it was someone whose mother was involved in the justice system her entire life. So we want to be inclusive and as loud as possible.
Yep. That's right. We're going to be inclusive and as loud as possible. Yep. I'll rock with that. Okay, before we hit our break, you guys said that
we gotta have a challenge.
You had a challenge for me.
So starting in one of the very first episode, and then I'm searching for the voice. And so Kristen and I have our jingle that we butcher. We've tried so hard, but I know you have an angelic voice. You have an amazing voice. So here's the challenge. We'll give you what you have to work with. It's not much, but we're doing it. Okay, ready? Reentry reframed.
Yeah. I don't know. What's there to improve upon? I think y'all got it. Okay. Here we go. Let me get you something. Reentry reframe.
Okay. I like it.
Y'all like that?
Yeah, I like it.
Lay it on wax. We'll get a studio date together. Yeah. Turn me up.
Wait, do one more time.
Okay.
Go freestyle real quick.
Reentry reframe.
That's it. That's it. And that's what we've been looking for.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah. You just cut it from the episode. Just throw it on there. Pay me my 50 G's every time you're on the episode. Yeah. Hey, 12 more. We're going for 12 more.
Non-profit.
So I'm about to go drop this contract and make this money, and then we will be right back with our intersection here on South by East.
Are you interested in podcasting, audio, or visual media, and just don't know how to get started or take your content to the next level? Then Studio 104 was built just for you. A fully functioning audio-visual podcast studio. Industry-level equipment at an affordable price to help you make that album you always wanted, start that podcast, or even share the story of how your business is impacting the community. Book your session along with a free consultation today at www.fellowshiphighcrest.com/studio104.
Welcome back to South by East, and we are here at the intersection with Melissa Goodman and Kristen Shook. And man, at this part of the show, we always like to say, like, hey, how do we allow our people to walk away with some resources? A big part of us even starting this show, where we talk about the scripture, culture, everything in between. The last part of what we say is how it impacts Southeast Topeka. So we always, since we bring on such amazing guests like yourself, we always love to show them where and how they can access those resources. So quick question for you guys. If there's someone who's watching this podcast who is either in the process of re-entering society or they know someone who's in the process of re-entering society, what resources are available for them and how do they gain access to those resources?
One of the ones I'll just mention, I know we've already talked about the podcast Reentry Reframed, but on the podcast we talk a lot about different resources and also ways you can support your loved ones as they are getting out of the justice system. But our website at mirrorinc.org, you can find any of our services, whether that be prevention, workforce success, reentry or treatment, assessments, anything like that. You can find those on our website, so we can give you those links.
So a lot of those programs that you talked about today,
yes,
like a lot of the ones that you talked about today, they're all on your website.
Yes, those are all on our website. And then there's also, if you heard something and you have more questions, there's also links to contact one of us. And we're always we have people reach out to us all the time who might have a loved one getting out of state prison or, might not be coming to the reentry center and want to run things by us. So one of the things as far as resources, one of my best pieces of advice for someone getting out of the system is if you're not going to be releasing to someone who is, in a positive environment and kind of on that same track, that's going to set you up for success. Your Oxford houses, Hope houses, sober living environments, those are great places to start. And there's also a lot of resources in the community to help pay for your first month's rent and deposit in a sober living environment. And so that's part of the grant that we're working on. A separate grant we're working on right now is for people who are in treatment with me or any sort of treatment, that we would be able to pay their first month's rent and deposit in a sober living environment, because it's so huge, especially when you're stepping down those levels of accountability.
And how would someone go about getting connected to one of those resources for like that rent assistance?
The Oxford House, there's different, or the Topeka Housing Authority, I think, is one of the only ones, federal funding you can't use for communal type living environments. And so that's a little bit tricky because you can't use housing vouchers for that type of environment. But we are working on, through the Shawnee County Reentry Council, we have created a reentry resource handbook, and it's really cool, and it walks you through all different chapters of, say, like employment, and specific to Shawnee County, and it's also geared towards reentry. So,
awesome.
Felon-friendly employers, felon-friendly renters, and also resources for like children and churches. You guys are mentioned in there.
Oh, nice.
But if you're getting out and you don't have medical care, you go to Health Access, which is donated services for the community. So this reentry resource handbook we could share with anyone, and it'll be on our website as well once we're done with it. As a council, we're almost done with it. But it's literally a one-stop shop for someone who is, we're trying to get it out to prisons and jails all over that way. That way people know, here are resources in my area specific to reentry.
Yep.
Oh, that is awesome.
We have a resource table in our hall where we'll be able to get some of those for
that would be great.
Yes.
Yes, that would be great.
We want to blast it out everywhere, and it's something that will be updated. But it's really, we have on the Reentry Council, we have a woman, Rochelle, with the City of Topeka, and then Kelly Martinez with KDOC. They are both like the queens of resources. That's their jobs, and so they have both put a ton of time and effort into this handbook. And we had a council meeting where we had small groups, and on each table it said like employment, and then there was a housing, and then medical, recreation, that kind of thing. And you walked into the meeting and you chose your table based on your
expertise.
Yep. So, and then that's how we put it all together. And then Kristen here got everyone's note cards and put it all together.
And like 48 hours. It was wonderful.
Oh.
One of them all-nighters. One of them all-nighters,
yes,
man.
sink or swim.
All right, I got you.
Sink or swim.
No,
But,
that sounds amazing. We'll definitely be looking out for that. The
Yep.
Reentry Resources
Resource
Handbook, Reentry Resource Handbook, and make sure that we get that out, as well as some of the websites that you've mentioned and you guys' website, to be able to connect there. I mean, with our last few minutes, we hit on this a little bit before, and I just want to jump back, like with all of the heavy spaces that you guys navigate and share, and the emphasis that you guys put on sharing stories. Is there one story that kind of sticks out in your heart that you just kind of like to share that really kind of impacted you and has kind of stuck with you?
I definitely have so many, but I have one that comes to mind. But if you want to go first, you can go first.
Okay. So the one that I have to shout out because of how far she has came already, and then how far I can see that she will be going, is Jody Witt. She was a guest on the episode, and she has had her own past of difficulties, and she now works with KU's technology program, who helps women who have been incarcerated learn technology skills so that they can set themselves up for a better future, a better job, and to be able to sustain themselves. And then Jody is also a property manager, which is really cool from her background to being able to do both of those things, which are really, really great skills to have. And after our podcast, we were applying for one of the grants, and Melissa had sent up a request for them to, I don't know, what do we say, contract with us or help us out if we did get the grant. And so we sent a link of Jody's episode up to the woman who helped create the actual KU technology program. And she listened to the episode, and from there, she got inspired to begin a podcast for what they are doing.
Wow.
And so Jody was letting me know, and I was like, okay. And she asked for some feedback and a little, guidance on the questions. And so I was like, okay, yeah, just let me know who I need to send it to, and I got you. And she's like, well, actually, you'll be sending it to me because I'm going to be the host.
Ooh, let's
Full
go.
circle.
Come on now.
Full circle.
That's incredible.
Yep. I cannot wait. Like, I'm so excited for her.
She's amazing. Her journey has been incredible. So she is so loving and kind, and
She's
just
gonna be so happy.
oozes gratitude everywhere.
And that is incredible. I don't want to cut you off, Melissa, but I feel like that's a great place. I feel like that's a great place to leave it. If you guys have not tuned in to Reentry Reframed yet, do yourself a favor, because there are more beautiful stories like that they are sharing. I want to send a big thank you out to Melissa Goodman, to MG and K2 in the house for helping us out here. And man, that is your intersection. So we will see you at the next episode. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow whatever platform you are listening or watching on. And we'll see you on the next episode of South by East.
Thank you for tuning into the South by East podcast, where we meet you at the intersection of culture and community. If you enjoy the content and want to help us keep the wheels turning, please rate and review us on your podcast app. For more information on resources shared, check the show notes, and we'll see you at the next intersection. We out.